Nigeria is not just dependent on the oil and gas industry. Non-oil revenues, largely comprising of companies' income tax, value-added tax, customs and excise duties, and federation account levies, are estimated to contribute about 1.37 trillion naira.
How the companies perform, how the private companies perform, and this is something that we usually do not link to government revenue. Companies pay what we call CIT, company income tax, and if a business hasn't done so well in a year, it means that the amount that they're paying as company income tax will also reduce. So there is correlation between how much companies pay as company income tax to how much federal government receive as their share of FAC allocation, which then goes towards funding the 2017 budget. So all of the monetary and fiscal policies that we make, we have to be very considerate about impact on private businesses, because in the long run, it affects revenue to government. If this business shuts down today, it means that government, whatever company income tax was paid to government last year will not be available this year. So there is a lot of things that need to be thought into some of the policy pronouncements that government will be making going forward.
This brings up the question of the degree of collaboration between the public and private sectors.
Many people in the private sector always struggle when they read provisions in the budget, and often with that phrase, in collaboration with the private sector, whatever that means. Yeah, it's always a problem, because the private sector looks up to government not only for policy direction, but they look for those catalysts in every sector that can sort of make an economy grow. The private sector, remember, they're looking for hard-earned revenues. They're looking for funding from abroad. But the question you are often asked when you do that is the enabling environment there? And that question is answered through your budgetary allocation. So it's always that struggle. What you expect when the government is partnering with the private sector is that there will be counterpart funding whenever you want to go into this sort of partnership. But as we can see, in reality, it never happens. We saw that in the power sector. Well thought out ideas, very good project plans and all that. When it comes to the actual doing, we fall short. And so projections begin to fall apart. But again, let's see, let's hope, and we hope 2017 is better than 2016.
A lot of items on the budget have caught the attention of Nigerians, like personnel costs, which is estimated at 5.1 billion naira for 18 MDAs, among other costs. This makes up the 70% of the total budget, which goes to recurrent expenditures.
We also need to be careful the way we critique it, because there are some aspects of the public sector, there are some segments of public sector that necessarily require huge recurrent expenditure. Take the military. You have a large personnel. The army, the air force, salaries have to be paid. So the manpower requirement in that area is huge. And it has implications for overheads, it has implications for personnel costs. Take the health sector. You are talking about doctors, you are talking about nurses and all of that. The personnel cost implication is high. The more health institutions you have, the more you have to recruit nurses. Because the process is not an automated process. You need manpower to drive it. Take education. Because these are sectors, these are areas that have huge personnel costs. To run the educational system, you need teachers. You're not going to use machines to run it. You need teachers. You have the buildings, if there are no teachers, you don't have education. And salaries of teachers have to be paid. So there are some sectors that are also heavy in the area of manpower requirements. And as the economy grows, the need to increase the staffing in these institutions will continue to grow.
Amnesty program has been boosted by 10 billion naira to 75 billion naira.
Some of us still do not think that that is the way to deal with the issue, but there's also a longer-term view to that matter. Do we continue to lose revenue in the name of fighting, militants in the region, or do we bring the militants to the table to continue to have, dialogue with them while we have a sustained source of income? So I think wisdom, lessons have been learned, and you've seen the budget for the region, for the amnesty program go from 65 billion as proposed to 75 billion, with an additional 10 billion increase. That, if well implemented, might, maintain the peace that we currently have, so that even though oil price has gone down, we can at least, be sure that we are producing the 2.2 million barrels per day that we are projected in our budget, so that we can have a bit of stability in terms of our revenue. So it's a wise decision on the government part to, fully implement that program again.
Provision for education still rated low.
Education is still struggling. We're nowhere near the Millennium Development Goals for education. And that's a big problem, because with a young population in a millennium generation, you need to boost education. Many of our schools are floundering, educational standards are dropping. You need that boost. Healthcare is another challenge. We still again haven't given the desired allocation. It's a bit more boosted this year than it was last year. And I know there are intentions to create centers of excellence in, I think, each geopolitical zone under this budget. It's so embarrassing when you go to these embassies and you see Nigerians who are queuing up to get visas for what essentially are basic medical needs and everything. Just the confidence just isn't there. So we need to deal with that.